Hi there, I'm Jay Cormier.
And I'm Sen-Fung Lim.
And we're the designers of the game Belfort by Tasty Minstrel Games. And we thought we'd put this video together to show you a little bit about the history of how we came up with some of the ideas behind Belfort and the iterations of the prototypes that we went through.
Yeah, so kind of showing you what's hit the cutting room floor so that you kind of know where it all came from.
So it started off, if you've read any of the interviews or the making of kind of designer diaries, as a pocket game. We put a self-imposed constraint of 25 tiles. Let's make a game, a kind of a Euro feeling game.
Imagine playing Warcraft, like Warcraft 1 or 2, with 25 cards.
The inspiration for Belfort was definitely like a Warcraft 2 type of game where you're sending your guys out, getting resources, collecting them back, and using them to build different buildings that will enable and unlock other powers. But here's some of the examples of some of the cards that we had. This is how you got a resource. We would flip some of these cards up and you would get a worker, or you would get a resource or whatnot. Some of them were events. We had an event deck where if this was flipped up, then everyone would lose a dwarf kind of thing. And then we also had guilds, which we still have, but it used to be cards. And I'm not sure, oh, it's not focused when I zoom in. Look at that. So anyways, we used to have cards like this. And then there was these little cards like this that you would pick up, saying, oh, I'm going to get, 2 wood and a gold this turn, or I'm going to get either a dwarf or a warrior.
Oh, warriors.
Ah.
You're not going to hear that much anymore.
Yeah, warriors used to be in the game. We used to have some combat, some attacking in the game. Not between players, but between what we had little advancing orc hordes. We had this little counter, and how did the orc hordes even come out?
Well, the orc hordes would come out on this orc track that was powered up by, every time you had an event card come up, there's a little orc face on it with a number beside it, and it would eventually generate enough momentum to force the orcs to attack you.
Oh yeah, we used to have, you can kind of barely see it. Each district used to actually be separated into 4 quadrants. And you can see there's a little warrior symbol right in the each one, and you could protect that kind of quadrant with a warrior, and all the buildings that touch that are protected by that warrior, so that when the orc hordes come in and start rampaging through the town of Belfort, you would be protected if you had a warrior there.
Yeah, and everybody else crushed.
But then
like
what?
bugs.
But then we didn't like it. No, well, we played with the warriors for a long time. They were in there for quite a while.
I think what happened during that was the playtesters gave us feedback that the orc horde specifically felt tacked on. And then there was also a dragon.
Oh, it was. Before the orc horde, it was a dragon.
Before the orc horde, it was a dragon.
Around and stomp
on your buildings, crush.
And here's the biggest thing, here's one of the big lessons we learned, was that in a building game, a game where it's all about acquiring resources, using these resources to strategize and figure out which buildings you want to build in order to get you the most victory points, in a game like that, where all of a sudden a dragon comes in and all of a sudden destroys something that you've kind of strategized around, it became less fun, and people were kind of like, oh man, the fun part of the game is building. So why don't we focus more on the building? Here's a couple old player aids that we had that you could keep track of all your resources and whatnot, and it's definitely changed a lot. You could carry more resources if you had something called a storehouse. That was one of the buildings on the old one, and we used to have a storehouse. And then we realized, again, another limitation. Why limit people to how many they can hold? Let's just let them build as much. The building's fun. Let's do whatever we can to promote more building. Yeah,
it's an interesting dichotomy that you go through as a game designer, thinking about what's realistic and what's fun. The balancing act of having to decide between, do we limit this? Do we say a warehouse or a storehouse allows you to carry more, which means there had to be a limit at first, or do we say, hey, the floodgates are open, everybody can carry unlimited amount of whatever they want, and go from there? About 10 of the first iterations of this game, there weren't cards telling you which buildings you could build. You could build any building you wanted to. You just said, I'm going to build a blacksmith. If you had the right resources, I'm going to build a blacksmith, and I'm going to build that blacksmith. And you'd put your marker down. One iteration, we actually, this was a crazy one. It was a good idea, but it's like, as soon as we did it all, it's like, no one's going to make this game because it's super expensive. Each building, we made a nice cutout. So when you said, I'm building a blacksmith, you would take this and you would actually place this on the board, indicating that this blacksmith now exists on the board. Not only every building had its own thing, it was every building in every player color.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in a 5 or 6 player game, it got really silly.
Very silly. And then it
silly.
yeah. We had one brainstorm from a playtester. Our playtesters are awesome.
Yes.
Shout out to those guys.
We love them.
Gals. Yep.
Yeah.
Was gold, which is really weird. For the longest time, this is just a card that shows income and getting money every turn. For the longest time,
Which doesn't happen anymore.
there was just wood, stone, and metal, and then
There was no gold.
there was no gold. And then somebody said, why don't we have gold so that we can have an actual kind of economy and then more easily compare how much things cost and what's the value of anything.
There was a mindset originally with Jay and I to have a goldless society where it was all barter and trade. But in the end, the playtesters didn't really jive with that. So again, we take all feedback as useful in some way. Whether or not we go with it is another question. But we'll listen to everybody. In this case, we decided to go with what the majority of playtesters were saying, is that they really wanted a fundamental basis of an economy.
Then, after, I don't know, 25 different actual physical prototypes we made of Belfort over the years, like just, you know, playtest, tweak, playtest, tweak, print a new one, playtest.
We went through a lot of paper.
Yeah, sorry.
Killed a lot of trees, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Mother Earth.
Then we came up with our final playable prototype that was pitched. So, for example, this was, if you remember, this was the first one of the first ones of the boards, and the last one, very similar. This is still our prototype, not the final art of the game.
Yeah, you'll notice that there are no warriors, no sectors. The new art, when you guys see it, hopefully
it's
you'll
available
be,
by now.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be as happy with it as we are. So Josh Capel did a wicked job on it.
Yeah.
So shout out to him.
And any good game designers, has bags and bags of tokens and cubes. So these are our, wood, metal, and stone, for example.
Lovingly hand painted, or with a Sharpie by me, silver Sharpie.
Silver. Absolutely. Here's our final player aid that showed where you put all your different resources, all your different workers, the cost chart for how much all the buildings cost, and then here's where your points for the end of game, because it is an area majority game.
Yeah, one thing we didn't mention before, get your play order. Notice how the areas are, unlimited rather than 12 or 13 slots that we had in the other buildings. So lots of changes.
I took all of this to Gamma, which is a convention where retailers go to check out all the publishers' display of new games coming out for the next year. This was my second time going here, and I had a great time the first time I went, and we got some contacts in the business, and it was the first time going. This is
Nothing signed.
Nothing signed, but a lot of good feedback, and a lot of publishers took some of our games away, gave us feedback, and said no thank you at that time.
That's okay now.
So in this time I went down, and I saw some people playing a game, and I went and checked it out, and I'm like, oh, do you guys need another playtester? And they're like, yeah, sure. So I started playing this very finished prototype of a game, which turned out to be Homesteaders. As I was talking to these guys, thinking they're just some other designers, they're asking me why I'm here. I'm like, oh, I've got games that I'm here. And one of the things that Sen and I do is for every game that we have, we create something called a sales sheet, a promo sheet, something like that.
Yeah, we call it sell sheet.
Sell sheet. And basically, it's for each game we kind of make up a funky little logo and some pictures of what the game looks like and the kind of game it is, area majority, all this kind of stuff, worker placement, and then a little bit of a turn order description. And so I had a bunch of these for each of my game, and I was showing them because I just think again, just showing them. And they're flipping through and they're like, oh, this one looks really neat, this Belfort one. And I'm like, oh, cool, maybe we'll play that later. And they're like, yeah, that'd be great. And then about 3/4 of the way through, it dawned on me, and I realized, I'm not sure how. I'm like, wait a second, these aren't the designers of this game, Homesteaders. These are the publishers. It's a new company at the time called Tasty Minstrel Games. I'm like, oh, and now they're interested in playing Belfort. Oh, that's exciting. So we played it. We ended up playing it a second time during the Gamma, and at the end of that one, they actually said, yeah, we'd like to take a crack at publishing this. And so they took it back, and Seth took it and he developed it further, and he playtested with his group and playtested the heck out of it, I guess. So that's pretty much how we got from basic idea to a published game.
Yeah, that's kind of it.
Thanks for watching the video, and hope you pick up Belfort from Tasty Minstrel Games, where you can go to tastyminstrelgames.com for more information.
And again, that's Jay, and I'm Sen, and rock on.